Good evening, I'm Morgan Galladay. I'd like to welcome you to the Miss Pillion Art League. Rosemary asked me to introduce her tonight, and it wasn't a very hard ask because I was twisting her arm at the time. I've known Rosemary since she and Bob got back from Italy. And April 3rd, which was just, 6 weeks ago, was an anniversary because in 2011, on April 3rd, a very large jet landed in Rome and two intrepid travelers disembarked. And the rest of it is history, and it's history because it's written down. Rosemary and Bob had decided that what they wanted to do was travel. And they did what we all dream about doing, about selling everything and running away from home. And that's what they did. They were living in Phoenix. They had lived in Phoenix for probably 30 years. And they decided that when they retired, they wanted to do something before they got too old to do it and enjoy it. So they sold their house. They stored what few possessions they wanted to at $1 a pound and shipped it all to a storage unit, sold their house, bought a condo in Milford, rented it out for 2 years while they were gone, and then they took off for the wilds of Italy. And they roamed around Italy for 2 years. This is the story about what they did when they got there.
Thanks, Morgan. That's it. So for those of you who don't know me, I am originally from New York City. My husband and I met there, and when our son was about 3 years old, we decided that New York was not the place we wanted to be, and so we up and moved to Phoenix, Arizona, sight unseen, and started a life there. And he became a firefighter, and I went to college, which I hadn't done out of high school, and studied fine art, drawing, painting, and graphic design, and spent about the next 20 years as a professional graphic designer. Bob, on the other hand, became a firefighter, which was something he'd always wanted to do, and he was also always interested in photography. And so while he was a firefighter, he studied photography and got a fine art degree at the university there. And so that was our life for many years. And we had, as Morgan said, we always dreamed about living in another country and just experiencing life from another culture. And what would that be like? You know, how different would it be? And so when we were planning to do this, to retire actually, Bob said, "What do you want to do when we retire?" And I said, "I just want to live cheap and make art." You know, and with the intention that we just wanted to live a simple life and have art experiences and make art and appreciate art and just live simply. And so the idea to go live in Italy came after we had traveled to a couple of other countries. And Italy is where my family came from. My grandparents were born there. And so vacations were never long enough. 2 or 3 week vacations were just not enough. And so we just decided we were going to go live there. So we spent about a year putting together all our paperwork to get a long stay visa, which we did. And so we decided that we would live in 4 different regions because we couldn't decide one place that we wanted to spend 2 years in. So we moved about every 6 months, which meant going to the questora and changing your address each time and waiting for someone to come and make sure you actually, really did live there so they could change your address. Anyway, there were ups and downs and ins and outs. And during that time, I kept a blog, and at that time, blogs were pretty new. I think I don't think, and it was really earlier than 2011. But at any rate, I wrote copious amounts in this blog and posted photos and posted my paintings, and so all of that is still out there on the internet. But I really wanted to have a physical book that I could hold in my hand and give to my children and grandchildren, and something that it's a piece of my husband who I lost 6 years ago, and I just really wanted something physical that I could say, this was what we did, this was our journey, and I wanted to share it because it was so exciting and fun, and I think hoping that it inspires other people who have these dreams that, you know, putting one foot in front of the other, you get there. You know, I said, all right, so when are we going? And he said, April 1st. And so I said, good deal. And we just started planning. And before we knew it, there we were, getting on a plane, you know, with an apartment in Perugia, Italy, and a condo in, no, we had a villa, actually. We have a villa in Milford. So anyway, it is really exciting for me to be here tonight. This is sort of the launching of my book, and it is a place that is so special to my heart. That Milford, the Mississippian Art League, was really the first place that welcomed us in this town and made us feel like we could be part of it, and just welcomed us into this community. And so to be able to do this for the first time and share this book with all of you, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. So it's really right that it should be here that I do this reading for the first time. Let's see what I want to tell you. So the blog, all that copy that I wrote, copious amounts, as I said, it was really a stream of consciousness writing, and it was written at the time. It's so fresh. It was that day that we were doing whatever we did, and I was writing about it on the laptop computer. And so it was a lot of things that we were looking forward to doing or things that we had just done, but it's all in the moment. And so because I wrote that blog, I was able to write this book, because I never would have remembered all the details and the things that are here. Well, grab yourself a chair.
Front row.
So it entailed, when you write a blog, the last thing you write is on top, and it goes down from there to the older things. Well, a book is the opposite way. So I had to take all of that copy, cut and paste it out of the blog and into a giant Word document, and then begin to edit it. So it's been quite a few years, to be honest, that I've been editing this book and cleaning it up and making, you know, kind of eliminating things that I thought were extraneous and that didn't really need to be in the book, but keeping the most important things that I really wanted to remember and pass on. So I just need to check my notes here, make sure that I tell you everything I wanted to tell you. And really the most important thing that I'd like to say is that, and we all know this, especially as we get older, that life is short and you don't know what tomorrow will bring. And so if you have dreams and things that you want to pursue, don't put it off. My husband died at 68. And so had we kind of waited until after we retired, this might not have happened. And so I'm really proud of what we did. It was not easy, and there were some challenges that came along on the way that if you read the book, you'll find out. But overall, it was just an amazing experience, and we gained so much from it. So with that, I'll do a little bit of reading. And so as I said, we lived in 4 different regions, and so the book is broken up into chapters. And the beginning of the book is what I call the prelude, and what's in that part is that whole year of excerpts from my handwritten journal, where we were planning, and there was all the angst about selling our house and all of that. So that's sort of the beginning, and then we land, then we're there. So as Morgan said, it's the story of how we retired, sold our house, put our things in storage, gave away, sold, threw away, everything, and we didn't restore a great old villa in the hills of Tuscany. We rented small furnished apartments, and whatever was there is what we used. And so our plan was to spend a month driving across country from Phoenix to New York, where much of my family still lives. And so we had our Farewell of America tour that ended in a farewell to America dinner in Little Italy with my family in New York, and next day got on a plane and left. So I'd like to read just a little bit from the prelude. January 3rd. This morning I woke up with tears in my eyes and a lump in my throat. We met with the realtor yesterday and signed papers to sell our house. I knew this day was coming, but I feel so sad. It will break my heart to walk away, even knowing there is excitement and happiness ahead. Giving up this house makes me sadder than I can say. Still waiting for our visas. It's been almost 2 months since we applied and we haven't heard a word. We could sell the house before we know we have them. The exchange rate is now 1.35 euros to the dollar. Our language skills aren't good either. We're optimistic that once we're there, it'll work out. I hope we're right. February 28th. We moved out of our house and into a friend's guest house. This morning we packed up our car and headed north for a month-long farewell tour of America, seeing some of the highlights of the USA, visiting family along the way, reaching New York by the end of March. I long to accept what comes next without fear. Be brave and look forward. Relax and take each day as it comes and not worry so much. Simplify our lives and let go of things. Hoping we'll be wiser with a new perspective on life. To be with this man I adore on this incredible journey is such a gift. I'm ready to set sail from this safe harbor, to dream, discover, explore, to see new things, make new friends, and have exciting adventures with open hearts and open minds. I'm ready to jump. And so, Chapter 1, Perugia, Umbria, Italia. Our plane touched down at Rome Fiumicino Airport at 8 a.m. We put our bags, 2 with clothes, 2 with art supplies, on carts and bought one-way tickets for the train to Perugia. Arriving at the train station on Piazza Vittorio Veneto, we were thrilled to find a taxi large enough to hold our bags. All my worry for naught. After a short ride to Centro, our landlord's son met us at the appointed place and helped carry our baggage the rest of the way. The 50-square-meter apartment isn't as mini as expected. You walk into one big room with a dining table and sofa bed, and in another area, the kitchen. The ceilings are around 10 feet high with 7 feet tall windows, so it feels spacious. The separate bedroom has windows on both sides, an antique armoire, large dresser, and 2 bedside tables. Plenty of space under the bed for our suitcases and other storage throughout. The mostly antique furnishings are tasteful. Large framed botanical prints decorate the rooms. We're ecstatic. The palazzo, essentially an apartment building, is located on a quiet street uphill from the main square. We enter through a locked gate into a private garden with a gazebo, table, and chairs. A flight of stairs leads down to a large private park with huge old trees, not yet leafed out. And at the end, our private view over the rooftops of Perugia. We've arrived in heaven. We slept until noon and spent the afternoon unpacking, then went out to find a market and bought things for tonight's dinner, some cheeses and fruit. Last night we shared a bottle of wine and a pizza, then wandered around Centro and off to bed. The adventure has begun, and we're thrilled to be here. We need to see about getting the internet in our apartment, a cell phone, permesso di soggiorno, which is the permit of stay, and codice fiscale, which is a tax number, so eventually we can buy a car. And are making ourselves at home. Gelato is plentiful, and we plan on having our share. Monday, May 16th. Festa dei Ceri, Gubbio. How do I describe this festival, whose origins are pagan, a celebration of spring, fertility, and virility in honor of Ceres, the Roman goddess of plants and meadows? With Christianity, it's been adapted to honor their patron saints. Ubaldo, their protector, who represents the stonemasons. Giorgio represents the craftsmen and merchants, and Antonio, the farm workers. 3 huge octagonally shaped wooden ceri, or candlesticks, with intricate inlaid patterns, are each topped by a small statue of one of the saints. Think Mr. Rogers King Friday. Not wanting to miss any of the festival, which begins early Sunday morning, on May 15th, we took the bus to Gubbio on Saturday and checked into a hotel. Giovanna, one of the friends that we met, said it was easier to win the lottery than get a room in Gubbio at the last minute. But we lucked out when the travel agent found what must have been the last one. You could feel the anticipation in the air as the townspeople excitedly prepared for the day. Before dawn on Sunday morning, we were awakened by the sound of drums. Hurriedly we dressed, grabbed our cameras, and ran out to see what was happening. Marching through the town, the tamburi, the drummers, stopped at each team captain's house to awaken them, standing below their windows until they came out and waved, and the drummers cheered and moved on. Marching and drumming continued throughout the morning. With bands playing a repetitive melody, you begin to hum after a while. It's so captivating. Walking through the streets alongside the drummers, the sound reverberating throughout, throbbing in our chests and in our ears as we fell in step. The Cerioli clustered at the stonemasons' church for a celebration of Mass, after which they carried the statues of the saints around town, presenting them to the townspeople. In the meantime, people gathered in the expansive main piazza. We waited for over an hour as the crowd grew larger and larger. There were moments of anxiety as the throng pulsed, expanded, and contracted, and we became more intimate with those around us. Suddenly, drums pounding, bells ringing, trumpets blaring, huge flags were unfurled, twirled, and then, with thousands of hands fluttering in the air, the down-facing Ceri burst out of the palace and into the square. Wine was poured on them as if Bacchus himself were present. Teams raced to hammer a stake into the holder, attaching the Ceri, while each captain stood on one end above the crowd, cheering them on. When the Ceri were in place, the moment we were waiting for arrived, the alzata, or the raising of the Ceri. The crowd roared, and the candlesticks stood erect. The first to reach the summit is the winner. Traditionally, first place always goes to St. Ubaldo as protector, with Giorgio and Antonio vying for second place. After a triumphant circling around the square of St. Ubaldo's, the Ceri will return to their resting place in the church at the top of the mountain, where they will remain until next year's festa begins. While the exultant teams descended, the mood turned quiet and peaceful as people stopped for glasses of wine or a coffee, walking through the streets, now littered and empty. Much later, we heard the sound of drumming and distant singing, and knew the celebrations would continue until late into the night as we slept, completely worn out and content to have witnessed the demonstration of solidarity, strength, and passion that is the Festa dei Ceri. Saturday, May 28th, heading for Spello with fingers crossed. This morning, we're taking the train to Spello for l'Infiorata, decorated with flowers, the religious festival of Corpus Domini, but the floral carpets throughout the town are what we really want to see. We've been trying to find a room for weeks with no success. Undaunted, we've thrown a few things in our backpack, change of underwear, clean shirts, and toothbrushes, taking our chance. We want to stay because they work on their carpets all through the night, and the best time to see them is early in the morning, before the rest of the tourists arrive. Spello isn't far by train, so if we can't find a room, we'll go back again tomorrow in the earliest possible train. Monday, May 30th, finding a room at the inn. We arrived in the early morning and went straight to the tourist office. In most cities, they help you find accommodation, not always possible if there's a festival taking place. Miraculously, the young woman knew about a room at the monastery or convent, but it was essential for us to speak some Italian. I said confidently I could, and she gave us directions. We found the building, went into a dark courtyard, and rang the bell. A small screened window opened, and I could just make out the silhouette of a nun who asked, "Si?" I explained, "Siamo americani turisti e la signora all'ufficio turistici ci ha mandato qui per la camera per stasera." Hoping I had said, "We're American tourists, and the lady at the tourist office sent us here for a room for tonight." She was so surprised by this question, she said simply, "Qui? Non qui," meaning, "Here? You must be joking." But she asked us to wait for un momento, since we seemed so certain this was true. We waited, feeling like Joseph and Mary searching for a room at the inn. In a few moments, another nun appeared, and I repeated my request. And again the response, "Qui? Non qui." "Si," I said. "Qui." She managed to come up with a few words of English, apologized for not speaking well, and told us we were at a cloistered convent. and needed to go next door around the corner. I asked her to scrivi il nome, write the name of the person I was to ask for. She opened another door where there was a sort of lazy Susan. I slipped paper and pencil in. She wrote down the name and spun it back to me. I thanked her, grazie mille, very much, and off we went. Preparations included gathering enormous quantities of flowers in every color of the rainbow, sometimes grinding them into smaller pieces for even more precise rendering. Boxes of flower petals were separated by colors in brilliant reds, yellows, purples, blues, and oranges, and herbs and vegetables in various shades of green. And so they worked, pouring petals into templates, similar to the way Native American painters create designs. People strolled around, watching the carpets come to life, the creative process take shape. By midnight, we were back in our room, exhausted, and anticipating a sleepless night because of the activity in the streets below, but not caring. At 6 a.m., we rose, dressed, and raced into the streets, still abuzz as artisans, the infieratori, finished their carpets. They looked exhausted. Some slept, especially the children, with the rest tweaking here and there. By 9 a.m., most were finished, and the streets began to fill as tourists arrived to admire the handiwork. They held Mass in the church around 10 a.m., and at 11, the procession began. The bishop and his attendants exited the church under an elaborate gold-embroidered canopy, walking on the carpets. Accompanied by music and singing, the congregation and tourists followed behind. After about 2 hours, most of the carpets had been trampled. So what remained were masses of crushed flower petals, with paper templates showing through. Trashed. It was a fleeting moment of beauty, the process most important, the joining together of many hands to joyfully create something lovely. Proof that nothing lasts, life is short but wonderful, and one must enjoy each moment as it spreads itself before you. I'm going to jump around just a little bit. Wednesday, August 31st, sunrise in the garden. I woke this morning at 5 a.m., not able to fall back to sleep. Slipped quietly out of bed, pulled on my jeans and grabbed a sweater and my corduroy jacket, and went down to the terrace to watch the sunrise. I took a flashlight, my journal, and my bag of watercolor supplies. A sprinkling of stars and the sliver of a crescent moon hung in the still dark sky. A few trucks were on the roads below, and cleaning crews were making their way around. A pinkish tint was starting to form just above the horizon, and a haze lay over the valley below. The mountains and hills mere shadows in the darkness. It was cool and a breeze was blowing. The scent of lavender was strong as I brushed past it at the furthest tip of the garden by the grape harbor. By 6 a.m., the sun still not above our horizon. The sky had turned a lighter shade of blue, and the stars were fading. A rooster crowed and a dog barked somewhere in the distance. The green hills below grew more distinct, and street lights went out. By 6:30, a bright pink spot was glowing just above the horizon, and the hills were visible, layering their way back towards the light. A breeze picked up and birds chirped. Suddenly, there it was, a bright orange slice rising out of the darkness. Crimson, tinged with pink and orange, the giant ball rose into the morning, and the light spilled across the rooftops and the Etruscan wall. Church bells chimed and houses glowed in pink and tan and gold. Tile roofs warm, crimson, and coral. I took a few photos and did some sketching before coming up to see if Bob was awake and ready for breakfast. I've been recording the things in the garden in a new sketchbook. These past few days, I've been painting flowers, leaves, and stones in my watercolor journal as a remembrance of our time here at Via dell'Aquila and the incomparable Giardino del Lucignolo, and counting myself so lucky to have landed here. We're heading into month 6 now. Unbelievable. I am so aware of time flying by and wanting to make the most of every minute before it slips through my fingers. But we're more relaxed, more peaceful, and happier than I can put into words. Saturday, August 5th. Verona and Madama Butterfly. I woke around 5 a.m. today, quietly tiptoed out of the bedroom into the living room, opened the shutters, and stepped out onto the cool balcony. The stars were still visible overhead, the sky a deep blue. Now it's almost 6 a.m. It's brighter and so peacefully quiet with the gentle breeze that comes at sunrise. There are no lights on the houses around us, no cars driving by. I've put coffee on to brew, waiting for the familiar bubbling sound telling me it's ready. We finally had some great rain. It was so refreshing that I stayed in pajamas until noon, enjoying the cool, wet air. Bob left to run errands. When he returned, he insisted we go to Verona, which was 5 minutes away. It was gorgeous out, he said, too nice to be in the house. So off we went. The sky was a brilliant blue with lots of drama as clouds swirled. Temperatures had dropped from the previous hot days. We parked near Castelvecchio on Corso Cavour and walked along the river, admiring the bridges and the views from the other side towards the towards the historic center. The river flows in a serpentine shape, and the city of Verona is said to be on a bend of the river Adige. We find ourselves falling in love with this city and enjoy strolling along, attracted to the reflections in the water and the colors of the buildings, the many beautiful churches and tall bell towers rising above them. The sky had been disappointingly hazy, but this day was an exception. Bob went off to photograph while I stopped to sketch on one of the bridges. Only later did we realize the shot he took from above included me sketching. All right. So now we come to the end. After 2 years in Italy, we have to admit we're tired and ready to go home. We've had so many memorable experiences, and a few we'd soon forget. But we're thrilled we did this. We had a dream, and we made it happen. We've learned more than we're even aware of at this moment, a time we'll always treasure and be proud of for as long as we live. There is so much on our minds now as our departure looms and emotions swirl. I can't say it was easy. It wasn't just luck. We worked hard to get here. There were many challenges, but it was absolutely worth it. We started this adventure saying to ourselves, now is the time. Life is short. You never know what tomorrow will bring. I still believe that's true. Oh, I was supposed to show you where we were. So, so we started in Perugia, and that's in Umbria. This is they call it the green heart of Italy, so it's kind of right in the center, and I think it's the only, well, not the only, but one of the few regions in Italy that's not on the coast. It's landlocked, and it's right next to Tuscany. So here's Tuscany, and here's Umbria. So we did not have a car when we got there. We just used public transportation. We had been to Perugia on vacation, so we knew that it was easy to get in every direction from there without a car. So that worked out really well. And so then from Perugia, we went south, and we drove because before we left, we bought a car, and so we drove all the way down south, stopping in this region where I have some distant cousins. And all the way down, and then took a ferry from Messina, I think, to Catania, which is down here somewhere, and then drove. So we put a car on the ferry and then drove, and this is where we lived in Sicily, called Marina di Ragusa, and it's right on the southeast coast of Sicily.
And what body of work is that?
This is the Mediterranean. Yeah, so our apartment was right on the Mediterranean, so the views were spectacular, and we were on like the third floor, but we went downstairs and across the street from there to see. So then from Sicily, we kind of backtracked and went up to, I think we actually left from Messina and took the ferry to Salerno, which is, here's Campania. Salerno is in this area, and drove all the way up to Verona, which was where we spent the summer and fall of that year. And from Verona, we were able to go to France and visit friends. We went to Germany, and we did a lot of traveling in every direction from everywhere that we went. We really were able to see an awful lot of the country. And so then after Verona, the last part of our journey was on the Amalfi, depending on which direction you're looking at. But it was really great location because being further along the Amalfi Coast, everywhere you went, you would have to drive that coast road, which can be, it's very crazy, and traffic can be nutty. So, but from where we were, we could go north and east, and so it was a really great location, and we saw just an awful lot. So there were still regions that we didn't get to, and even in 2 years you can't see everything, but it was quite amazing. Any questions?
What year were you there?
Actually, from 2005 to 7. A little bit earlier than. Yes.
Do you have a favorite part of the 2 years and one place where you was all wonderful?
If you read this, it's
Okay.
really hard for me to say. I loved each place we were for different reasons.
Uh-huh.
Perugia is medieval. It's the architecture, and it's a hill town, and we lived right in the center of the town, and it was the first place we were, so we were sort of wide-eyed, and but we really had the attitude that whatever every day brought us was going to be great, and we were so fortunate to have. We rented from just owners who had these apartments that we found on the internet. And they were just determined that we were going to see the things they thought we needed to see. And took us on family outings, and invited us for Christmas dinner and stuff like that. So it's so hard to say. So Perugia was magical, and because of where we lived, we had this apartment that it's so hard to describe. So as I said, you go down to this park, these huge trees, and then below that, there was a private garden, and the garden was on an Etruscan wall. So the Etruscans predate the Romans. That's how old this town is. And there was a huge stone table at the end of this garden that overlooked the valley and Assisi in the distance, and the fog would come in, and it was just amazing.
Yeah.
And then Sicily is, people would say, "Oh, you're going to Sicily? Oh," and it was so different, completely different from Perugia, especially the town that we lived in, because it was a fairly new-ish town, kind of a summer resort for the people who live in the town, like 20 minutes away. So there's Ragusa has two parts of the city. There's Ragusa and Ragusa Ibla, and this is Ibla. And so there was a huge earthquake in the 1600s that destroyed a large part of southeastern Sicily, and so they rebuilt a lot of the stuff, and that's when Sicilian Baroque came into being, I guess. So lots of really fancy churches and stuff, but so just different. Different, and you're surrounded by the sea, and we're on the beach all the time, and it was not only, it didn't really get warm enough to swim until almost towards the end of our time there, because we went south in the winters and north in the summers, because it's more expensive to be in these southern places in the summer, and hot, very hot, and lots of people. So, and then Verona is just. Lots of people go to Venice and they kind of overlook Verona, but for me, it was like a cross between Venice and Florence. It's very Renaissance, and all these bridges, and just a beautiful town, and great people. The people in every place, they were just wonderful. And then the Amalfi Coast, everyone loves the Amalfi Coast. It's hard not to. The landscape is amazing, and again, different. Our apartment in Verona, the north is. I think it's sort of more German. There were some places in the north of Italy where we were like, "Do you speak Italian?" And they recycle everything. We had 3 or 4 different recycle bins in the apartment, and everything's really swept and clean and tidy. And Naples and that area. Kind of has a reputation for maybe not being so clean and tidy. But I loved it anyway. I loved Naples. I loved the helter-skelter stuff that, the way the architecture is. And I don't know, it's just the people are so warm and friendly. It's just all of it. So it's, to answer your question, it's really hard for me to say
Oh, sure.
which one is my favorite. Bob would say Sicily, hands down. He loved Sicily. He was happiest there. Not that he wasn't happy anywhere else, but he really loved Sicily.
Was there a region that inspired the more art? And
The what? I'm sorry.
was there a region that inspired more art? I mean, maybe you did more.
No, I would
painting?
say not any one more than another. I drew all the time.
As it should.
What language did, I mean, you stood here and sounded very fluent when you spoke to the nun, but I mean, did you use Italian all of the time, or did you?
We tried. It was tiring. You know, by the end of the day, we were, you know, trying to think in Italian. I had taken about 1.5 years Italian language classes at the community college in Phoenix before we left. And then when we got there, we spent a month at it's called the Università per Stranieri, which is the university for foreigners. And this word, I love this word stranieri because the word itself means strange or stranger, but it translates to foreigner. So it's an interesting word. But so we did that for a month, every day, 5 days a week. We were in class, and we met people from all over the world, you know, from China and Australia and Russia. I mean, there were just people from all over, and they all speak English. It's interesting how people, the Europeans and people from anywhere other than America, they speak other languages because they're so close to each other. I think, you know, they speak French and they speak German, and so we were all able to converse. It was all really easy for us because we speak English, but they teach these classes only in Italian, so which was really interesting. And you think, how the heck do they do that? But so we learned a lot. And then before we went to Sicily, we had a private tutor come to our house and give us lessons for probably 2 months. And then we were just, you know, thrown into it. And people in Sicily, they were saying, you really should study Sicilian because they don't speak Italian down there. It's not true. They do. One of the things that Mussolini did that was a good thing was he insisted that they teach standard Italian in schools. So everyone in Italy has to learn standard Italian. Even though there are dialects, every little region has its own dialects. In fact, our friends in Verona said he didn't understand kids that lived, you know, in the other neighborhood because they had a different dialect. So, but Sicilian it's actually is a language. It's not a dialect. It's older than Italian, and it's its own language. But they do, and that is really the language they speak at home and with friends and family. But they also speak standard Italian, and many speak English as well. So it was, but we tried our best, and they kind of said, okay, you need to try, you know. So by the time we left, we got pretty fluent, you know. We could have conversations. I mean, the most difficult was not having the vocabulary, you know, because we could form sentences and stuff, but if it was more technical or something specific to like fishing or whatever, you know, we didn't know the words.
But earlier, you probably, I came up earlier doing sketching. How much actual cleaning did you get to do?
Quite a bit.
I didn't know if you used
My
a lot
painting
of
is
sketching
usually small.
not here, but
Yeah, small paintings. I did larger paintings like this one from photographs after I came home.
Mhm.
But the sketching also includes painting. I mean, it's a sketchbook, but I'm drawing and painting in it as well.
They're over here on the counter, and there's one on the table, and we'll move out of the way. And then Rosemary finishes, so you all can come over and take a look.
I did some of those little black, the little moleskins. I did what I call drive-by sketching. So Bob would be driving, my husband, and I would be drawing the landscape as it was flying. And if you look at these, you'll see little color notes that I've written to myself, like, you know, this is chartreuse with green pine trees and some yellow rust browns. So later it was like a coloring book, you know, I just had color. And there you can see how they're very quick very quick sketches, you know, just trying to capture the landscape. Like these were these really rugged mountains with just trees clustered on top of them, and it's just so interesting. But you know, this tiny little sketch, just trying to get it as it was zooming by me. So my drive-by sketches. So I have some champagne. Because I wanted this to be just a celebration of actually this book actually coming to life. It's been a long time coming. It was not an easy process, but I'm really proud of the way it all turned out. And yes,
Well, I just wonder what your goal was about family history, because you had a photo, you said I'm looking at,
yeah, I was able to trace 3 out of 4 grandparents.
and what did you see? Birth
Well,
records? Or?
If you know their name and their birth date, or their mother's name and a birth date, they have these big ledgers, you know, that are this big, and they're on the shelf, you know, and they just, you say it was, you know, they were born something like 1895 or whatever. And exactly, but this is in a big ledger book, and so they bring it down, and there's all this glorious longhand writing that's not always easy to understand, but they'll go right to the book and, you know, flip through the pages and
In the
there
town,
it is.
you have to go to the town where they were born, or the?
Yeah, the town where they were born. Yeah, if you know where they were born and you go there with that information, as I said, you have to have some information to find them. So we're the ones that I had. My paternal grandfather, my name was Biletto, we cannot find. The story is that he was an orphan, so, and there's no record of him coming through Ellis Island or any, you know, no ships with his name on it. So I don't know, did they change his name when he got here? I don't know. There's a derogatory expression that you may have heard, it's WOP, W-O-P, and where that came from is, it means without papers. So they somehow got on the boat.
So we're not.
Somehow got on the boat without, you know, having the proper papers. So I don't know, and it's a frustration, but there's no way that I can find him. His record starts in America. That's, but the others, I was able to get birth certificates back to the 1700s.
And
I'm
did you see?
curious to know what drew you to Milford.
Well, people do ask us that. Bob was a firefighter, so he was always looking for places for us to retire that were affordable. And so Delaware kept coming up in his searches. And as a New Yorker, I would say, Delaware? What's in Delaware? But we came, we visited, we liked it. We liked the fact that it was close enough to the beaches. We couldn't afford to be any closer to the beaches. So we found Milford, and we found Hearthstone Manor, which was really kind of what we were looking for, someplace that we didn't want a house, we didn't want to have to take care of the house or the gardens or any of that stuff. And it just seemed like a nice little town. And so, to be perfectly honest, we sold our house in Phoenix, and we had the money that we, you know, the profit that we made from our house needed to be reinvested in something. I didn't want to just invest it because I was afraid of that. I'm not that daring. So I said, no, we need to buy something. At least we'll have a place to come home to. And if we don't like it, we can always move. Well, we liked it, you know. And when we did come back, the economy wasn't that great. Houses were not selling, and you know, we kind of were here. And then we found the art league, and we made friends, and it's home. And I really love being here. So that's how we ended up in Milford, kind of almost dark, you know, from pure, really intense.
Was there one particular meal that stands out?
Thank you.
Yes, in fact, there is a meal that stands out now that you say that. The pizza in Naples was fabulous. Just where pizza was born. But we were in Alberobello, which is on the. We went to see the Truly. I don't know if you noticed a photograph with kind of pointed roofs. They're called Truly. That's plural. Trullo is singular, but they're these cone-shaped roofs that there's no mortar. They just fit the stones to this shape. And we wanted to see that before we came home. So we went, that is in Puglia, that's in this region. This is Bari, maybe you've heard of Bari. And so this region is where these truly are. So we came from Vietri and drove across to see these truly. And we went into this restaurant, it was pouring rain, and it was like, what's open, you know? And so the first place we came to was called, the translation is the 7 Deadly Sins, is what this restaurant is. And so we went in, we were the only ones in the restaurant, which normally is not a good thing, you know, but it was pouring rain outside, and the owner said, come on in. There was a big fire thing in the center of this restaurant. Come on in, I'll make you some food. And he made the most amazing orecchietta. You know what orecchietta is? The shape of that pasta. And it was so amazing. It was really like the most delicious meal that I had. And we went there every day that we were there. He said, what do you feel like? I don't know, I need some soup. Okay. So yeah, that would be the one that stands out.
Do you write about food in the book?
I do, yeah. It's not, I wouldn't say it's for foodies, you know, we're not foodies, but there were meals that you just have to write about, you know. Like all the seafood that we had in Sicily, you could go down the road to this little town where the fishermen were bringing in the, you know, they have the swordfish there, and you know, you just buy it right off the boat. And it's just so fresh. Yeah, the markets. So I do, yes. I do talk about food.
And you included recipes.
There are, I forgot to tell you that, there are, not a lot, but there are my family recipes for my great-grandmother's tomato sauce, for chicken parmigiano, for pasta in brodo, and Aunt Rosa's zeppelins. and there's something I talk about a lot in the book, which is my cockeyed chocolate cake, which is not Italian, but it's in the book talking about this cake. And then the back of the book is full of photos and paintings, and there are over 60 color images in the book.
I have a question. What was the most challenging with trying to get ready to make that move? Because I'm thinking about doing this. As a matter of fact, I'm like hooked on these $1 houses where you restore. My mom's like, you got to do this. You got to do it. You can do this.
Do you have the money to restore it?
That's the question. and then I'm like reading, okay, you got to do the visa thing. You got to show income. And I'm thinking, oh, is it really worth it to do this? So what was the
We spent
challenge?
a year putting all of the paperwork together. So we had to apply for it. Then I don't know how it is now. It could be different now. But we needed to have long form birth certificates and marriage licenses. So like my birth certificate had my little footprint on it. You know? So I had to write to the city of New York and get them to send me the long form thing. We had to prove income because we were living on my husband's Social Security, not Social Security, but his pension. He had to write a letter that he was going to share it with me so that I didn't end up on the dole. You know? So we had to prove that we had income, and it was very amusing because they wanted letters from our bank, not our bank statement, but a letter from the bank that said how much money we had. And we almost thought we were going to get turned down because we weren't rich enough. You know, like it never occurred to me that that would be an issue. But he had to really prove that we had enough that we weren't going to end up in welfare.
What region did you find was the most expensive to stay at?
Probably the north.
The north?
Yeah.
Because that's where I'm looking at. It's like the Spello area. I just totally.
Well,
I fell in love with
that.
Spello.
I don't consider that north.
Oh, you don't?
No, that's
It's like the middle area.
Yeah, it's kind of.
Yeah, I just fell in love with
Oh,
Spello
it's
when I was
wonderful.
there. As a
Yeah.
matter of fact, my dog is named Spello because of the village. And I said, "You're Spello now," because of that village. But I just fell in love with it, and I loved how Spello was just so centralized because you could get on the train and within 2
Yeah,
hours.
it's a great
you were
town.
everywhere.
It's a
So I'm
beautiful
looking
town.
around
Flower,
that area.
opposite, you know,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
spilling over. It's just lovely.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's so many wonderful little towns. Yeah. So yeah, it was challenging just getting it all together. We had to get fingerprinted by the FBI, made sure that we didn't have any criminal background. What else I have a list in the book as to what we needed to get. But it was, yeah. And then once you're there, then you have to apply for that permit of stay, the permesso di soggiorno. And that's kind of nerve-wracking because you have to go to this police building and lots of people are there for all kinds of reasons and it's really stressful. But you know, you get the most fun part is when she says, okay, so you're handing her these papers. My husband had a binder with like everything in triplicate. I mean, it was just very organized. So she was giving us back stuff that we didn't need to get, and then they go, I love this in Italy. They always do this. It's like, okay, the stamp. And they go. You know, come back in 6 weeks or whatever. So you don't get everything immediately. So it's then you're waiting. So.
Yeah, because I've been reading what you need and everything else, and I'm just like, yeah, just go there for 6 months.
There's a website, Expats in Italy,
Okay.
the original, because there's another one, but Expats in Italy, the original, I think it's called. That we ask all kinds of questions. Expats in Italy. Yeah. They're really helpful. People who live there, and there's even more sites on the internet now than there were when we were going.
Yeah, I've been
We were
looking,
like-
I'm like overwhelmed
Yeah.
right now. Looking.
Yeah, yeah, we had to go to the consulate and get all our ducks in a row, and then Bob drove to California, where the other big consulate is, to wearing a suit and tie. Oh, it was, yeah, and then just waiting. We had to sell our house if we wanted to go. We couldn't live, there if we didn't sell our house. But then we were selling our house, and we still didn't know if we had the visa. So, okay, so what are we? We're just going to go. If they turn us down, we're just going to go for 3 months, and that's you can stay on your passport, and that's what we'll do. We'll just stay as long as we can stay. So
Is that like the limit, 3 months?
3 months on your passport, yeah, without a visa. And we didn't. It wasn't a visa. We couldn't work. It was just a residency visa, they called it. And I'm going to open up some champagne and we'll have a little.